wanted to like, we should share this conversation because this conversation is about freelancing, creative stuff, and all the good stuff. And we were talking, what did we talk about? My stand, I think. We did talk about the art of the war. We did talk about business in general, how it's slow and busy at the same time for you and me. And a couple other things like Midjourney, AI branding, websites. And I think we just recapped that.
Yeah, so I guess we'll just talk about everything we just kind of talked a little bit about off camera, but, you know, before these shows, we always talk a little bit about what we're going to shoot. Sometimes we don't. So for you guys out there, hopefully you can see which ones we are planning and which ones we're not planning. But yeah, today I think, you know, we were talking about a project of yours, man. I mean, go ahead and take it off, I guess. There was some project where you had a hard time getting started, I guess, recently.
Well, it's a weakness that I discovered by myself. You know, sometimes as a videographer, you should have a shot list, things to do, you know, like basically the prep work for the gig, you know, that's one of the things. But sometimes life is weird and you just get thrown into the water and you have like some default ideas what you could do with an event like that. And you would be just like, okay, I have a wedding. There's not a lot you have to plan because you did a couple weddings. And you're like, okay, got to get this shot, got to get that shot, and maybe get some creative stuff, and then we can make it work. And that's basically like the three things that you kind of have to keep in mind to be just like somewhat safe. If you have a second shooter, everything gets like way easier. Obviously, sometimes there's projects where you're like, let's say you get hired for an event, and there should be like a budget for like, hey, we need to plan, we need to script what's going on, but you get this gig like the day before, and there's no way that you make this happen, you know? So you basically come into a situation, you don't really know what's going on, but you just make it happen. And I'm good with that type of stuff, you know? The only problem is like when you sit down and you have all your footage on the hard drive, obviously doubled, so in case something goes wrong, and you're like, what are you gonna do with this now? And that is the moment where I'm like, oh, I start to overthink and not making the progress that I should, and make it more complicated than it should be. And then I'm like not doing anything.
So yeah, so you're talking about like the blank page, the blank canvas type of the age-old problem of all creatives.
Yeah, how to write the first sentence of a book, for example.
Well, video is interesting, right? Because a lot it's weird because you have to wear two hats. You have to, when you're shooting it, you're wearing this very technical hat, right? Everything has to be perfect. It has to be done in a certain way. You have to use your gear in a certain way, and then you have to take that hat off when you get home and put on the creative hat. And sometimes that gear shift is hard, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a tough thing, right? So I guess what do you do when that happens? When you open up Premiere, and what do you do? Like, what's the next
So usually, you know, when you shoot the event, you're already like, okay, I have this shot, and then I have that shot, and you already know about that, so you don't have to watch everything because you already saw it. You have a feeling for it already. You know, like what was good, what was bad, and it completely changes if you like get footage from somebody else and you have no idea, you know, and you're just like, you go in there and you're completely not biased, and you're just like, okay, this is kind of well, whatever, you know, you have a better view about the footage if you have to rewatch everything. So that is usually step one, like watching everything and like determining what is a good shot, what is a bad shot. Usually, because I have already like a feel for the footage, I'm like, okay, I want to tell this type of a story. And then the client comes around and is like, can we actually do this? And you're just like, you look at your footage and you're like, maybe.
So I have a question. Do you have the client sign off on the concept before you even shoot a lot of the times? Like, do you get their agreement, like, we're gonna do this panning shot and it's gonna do a focus shot and then we're gonna do this? Like, do you get them to sign off on that type of stuff before you even shoot? Or
I basically like interview them, you know. I interview them and like, okay, you have this event going on. What would be the ideal outcome? And if I understand the ideal outcome, I should be fine. And I usually prepare, like, let's say you get booked for like a concert, what I got offered, and he throws in a master class. I'm like, you're trying to get a master class filmed with multiple cameras for the cheap, you know? So obviously I throw in my set like all the stuff that I would need for that, but then it's like, yeah, you have to plan the shots for it, you know. So usually in the beginning I already know what they kind of want, and then it always evolves into something else.
So I guess when the kind of freeze you were talking about, I guess what's the freeze then? So you kind of know, it sounds like you already know the concept. You already know kind of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I guess what pauses you? Is it the fact that like there's different cuts that could be better and you just don't know which one's the best one? Or I guess tell me about that freeze, because it's really interesting.
Oh, you mean the freeze like before you even start and put the clips in?
Yeah, like you kind of talked about that moment where you have like the blank page thing. Like what? Yeah. So what's happening there? Because you kind of already have the concept. You said you've kind of already know kind of what you're trying to do. What's the goals? So what causes you to freeze then?
Not knowing the music, for example, that's like a big one. You know, like sometimes you search for 6-8 hours, just like Artlist.io or some YouTube databases, like this song could work, but then you don't visualize the video with that song, and it's like I don't feel that, you know. And that's like one of the things, like if you don't even have the song, it's like with what clip do I start? Do you start like strong and powerful? Do I do it more emotional, or do I do, you know, this is then where it's like it's getting weird, you know. And you know, so you start with music though. So is that usually your first step on most things? Do you start with music to kind of set the pacing, or? No, with this project right now where I had like, okay, I don't have time for the shenanigans. Usually I take my time with the shenanigans and just do what I feel like. But I'm like, okay, I'm already booked for the next thing, and I already shot the next thing, and I should start editing both things at the same time. I'm like, I can't sit around and do what I feel like, you know? And sometimes when you just throw clips together, put some music on, you feel the video, and you're like, oh, now I can make the video actually what it should be, versus like you sit around and I'm like, this could be nice, that could be nice. Because in the end, you always come to the conclusion, like when I just start putting music on it and putting clips together, I see if it works or not, instead of like just thinking about it.
Okay. So yeah, so I guess for people out there, like other videographers and stuff, I guess, do they? So what would you suggest to them? Like, you know, when they capture all this film, they open up Premiere or whatever they use to work in. What would you tell them to do? What would you suggest? Like, this is my first project as a videographer. I have all this footage. I just opened up Premiere. Like, what would you tell that person to do?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. Like, I learned there's like a way in Premiere Pro or in other editing softwares to do like a pancake edit. What is like one of my favorites when I have no idea what to do. Let's say you have just like a bunch of footage. You don't even know what looks good or what is good. You just like have a timeline, and down below is a timeline. You just throw all the footage into the top timeline, and you basically cut all the stuff out what is trash. And then in the end, you have like a tiny timeline with like some footage that's usable. And then in the bottom, you have the timeline that will be your video. You just drag down what you want in there.
Oh,
and that gives you so you basically have like, okay, if you have no idea, you already know what is good looking, what could fit together, and it makes it really easy to arrange, you know?
And you called it, what'd you call that again? Sorry, was that pancake editing?
Yeah, it's a pancake edit.
I like that.
It's one of those techniques that can be really helpful if you're stuck. You know, sometimes you're just stuck and you don't know what to do. And I'm like, that always helps me out. Like, if I don't know what to do, I just do that. But sometimes it's just like pen and paper, doing like a little 6-picture story, kind of, I would say. I just write out, okay, first we start out with event, then we go to speech, and then getting ready, and then we're going to the game, and then we final message, kind of. And that's like then the 4 or 5 steps or whatever. And you go through that and just like, okay, what shots do I have in that order, and what song would fit the event part or the speech part?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I kind of love that process. I mean, I do something similar. Like anytime I get like, let's say a catalog, right, and I have all these pictures to put in this catalog, I do the same thing where I open up all the pictures. And then, you know, in Apple, you can mark things green, red, whatever color, and I just will literally go through and just quickly mark anything that's good. I just mark green. So do the same thing, right? You just go through what is the good stuff, and then stuff that like maybe is usable, but I don't like it. But if I need it, then I'll use it. Then yellow. So that's what I'll always do is green and yellow, and I'll just go through and mark it. So when someone hands me 1,000 pictures to go through, that's kind of my process too. Which sounds like that's what you do. You have 1,000 different clips, so you're just kind of like, what's the good stuff? Let's get the good stuff first. The stuff we definitely want in the video. video.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you may even have like a middle kind of track in there that's like the maybe stuff too. Like it's not bad, but like it's not great, but we're gonna still save it for B-roll and stuff like that.
If it would help for the story, you know, then you would use that stuff. And I mean, like, as a web designer and brand designer, you probably have the same issue. Like, let's say you have, like, that website. How do you decide the mood? How do you decide what is the theme, you know? That would be now a question for you. Because, like, you have that creative freedom to tell the story, and you hope the client finds, like, oh, this is what I'm imagining, you know?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is like so the web design is really interesting, and this is where I think being a designer first and coming into web design as a designer, other than not a developer, becoming a web designer, is the fact of understanding the need for brand. So some projects you come into and they already have a very solid brand. They've already done a branding process. Let's say they have a brand guide.
Stuff.
They have brand assets. They already have a story they're trying to tell. And that's cool because you walk into that. Now you're like, well, how do I complement this story they're already trying to tell? And so in that case, for me, it's just asking, hey, send me everything you have. Show me everything you want to show me. Give me everything that's been made that's kind of hit the mark. And then we're going to have this website be a link in that world. And then sometimes there's clients where they haven't done the branding process. So a lot of small business owners, for example, they want to open up that online store. They want to get that thing open before they really can define what it is. And so then, you know, sometimes I even have to try to tell them, you know, well, can we delay the website another month? And then in this month, can we do a brand process with you? That can be hard to sell. I will tell you that. It's like
I would be already like, do I really want that? I want to hit that street running, you know. I want something presentable. I want to drive sales to justify your product, you know.
Exactly. So you know, and so you know, in a lot of branding conversations, and I would say a lot, I would say half the people get them, and where they walk in, they get the value of branding, and the other half, you really do have to explain like what is the value of branding at all. But yeah, you know, so for those people that are willing to put it off a month, we do a full brand process. Now, sometimes people don't want to do that. And so for that, what we'll do is we'll just try to figure out, okay, well then you've already said that the function is more important than the aesthetic of this, the feeling of this. So what is that function? And let's just focus on that. And I won't spend a lot of time. So something I've gotten better at in the last few years, that I was very guilty early on, is I would start like a web design process, and then into the process essentially brand their company too for free, because I had to make it look nice. And I would be caught in the process and be like, oh dang, we don't have a color palette, we don't have fonts. And so I ended up having to brand them free of charge just to keep the web design process moving. Where now if they are vehement about not spending any money in finding out their brand and uplifting it, I have my own tool chest now. You get one of the tool chest fonts. You get my first stab at color, and we're just going to do this one stab at color, and we're done. And so it's interesting where you do have to you either get the story or you don't get the story. Now, to get to your original question, when I get a website and they don't really know what that story is, and now it's like, okay, make a compelling website, that can be very difficult. So like you, I actually start pencil and paper. I just come up with some ideas. Sometimes I'll go online and look at inspiration first, but I try to do that a little bit later. I think doing that too early kind of puts you in a corner. But yeah, I start pencil and paper like you, and then just like you, I just see what they can give me, right? And then I definitely filter out what's the good stuff, right? Do they have cool pictures of their products? Do they have good testimonials to share? Do they have good content? And so I gather that. There's a big gathering process. If I just steal everything, if they have a website already existing, I have a tool that I use, I don't remember the name of it, that they'll go out and crawl the website and steal all the content and package it and send it to me. And so I'm like already taking like all of their stuff, backing up their website, a full hard backup of their website now, and just taking things that work. And sometimes it's nothing, right? Sometimes I'm like, all right, we got one picture and I like that green. That's it. You know, and so, you know, and then, you know, what I'll do in those cases is that's where something like yeah, using pencil paper first, but then I'll jump into Figma. I brought up Figma before. For any person that's thinking about web design, I would suggest using that tool. Figma is a great tool it's really hard to learn at first, but it's a great visual first type of way to build a website. And I'll just go in there. And, after you've done this a while, you have templates and stuff to create what's called a lo-fi wireframe. Yeah. And starting there, and then just placing the things that need to be on the website. So for you in a video, it's like, what has to be in this video? If we miss anything else,
about the about page and like the shop link and whatever, I see what you mean. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, so for a website, selling like a videographer, if he hires me for his website, then the number one thing that we want to happen is probably him to get booked for a gig. So then that's where we start. Cool. And then what I'll do even is, if I feel like the client is not a very visual first guy, he's a very business first guy, is I'll show him the wireframe first with no styles, very blah, very boring, and it'll scare him a little bit at first, like, wait, is this what you're going to build? And it's like, no, what we're focusing on is the order of elements and the importance of those elements. So if you want to get scheduled, that should be the first thing they should see. If you want to show people that you're trustworthy, that should be the second thing they see, and just kind of going through that process.
God damn.
So what's nice is it kind of stops the creative block. Then you're out of the world of colors and fonts and is this beautiful and does this tell a good story, and you're more just like, what is the function? What does this, when I tear everything else out of it, what does this thing need to do?
Yeah, so that creative block, how did you learn about how to counter that? Because like that is my cheeky segue to the next thing.
Well, so when I was in art school, I'm trying to think like which class this was.
Because like we all have like that creative block, and it's a real thing, and it can be very daunting. And you also build it up. The more you deal with it, the bigger and worse it gets. And it's like, it's technically hindsight 2020. It's always like, oh, I could have just done that and thrown those clips together, and that would have worked. If I would have done other clips, it still would have worked. It would still have been good if the footage was good, And you just build that like that monster up, like that empty page becomes stronger and stronger the more attention to pay what is the right first step. But it seems like the first step doesn't really matter as long as you just take it. And if you fall and tumble, whatever, as long as you get up and just like, okay, I'm fine. That was just a couple stairs.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, I think something that a lot of creatives may have a problem with, like, and it happens with some of the best creatives out there, is they get stuck on the quality too early. I think everything I put on that sketch page has to be perfectly sketched. Everything I write on the whiteboard has to be a perfect like idea, and I think that's where that creates the kind of white page scenario you're talking about, where I can't remember where in art school I really learned this, but the idea of get your bad thoughts out as quickly as you can. So even if it's a stupid idea, tell the room, write it down, now it's out of your brain. Yeah. Get it out of your brain.
What I feel like is also very helpful, let's say you have that blank page, and sometimes like the basics are the best thing to do, be logical. The event started from A and go chronological, Yeah. That could be a solution. Sometimes, let's say, the chronological is boring, and after you've done it already in that way, and you're just like, oh, actually, I got a new idea. The new idea will actually come faster together and better together after you did the bad one already. Like as long as you get started, you're like, oh, now I know the footage. Now I can tell a new story way faster because I already saw the footage. Or it's the same with the website. If you already built the website and you're like, if I rearrange everything, this would work so much better. You already have the parts probably somewhere saved and like pre-coded or whatever, and you just throw them in there.
Well, yeah. So I think, and part of that too is you're finding the good questions to ask, right? It's like when I start to put together a website, almost every single time I'm finding stuff that I didn't think to ask until I built it, where I'm like, oh, wait, he does have more than 3 products. So how are we going to scroll that part if there's more than 3 here? And you just start to ask these like questions that you wouldn't have thought in the conversation. But then once you start actually piecing it together, you're like, oh, actually, I need to ask him this and this, and I need to ask this. And we didn't even think about this thing, but now that I'm building it, I'm like, oh, wait, we have to think about that thing too. Yeah. And so like early on, so in one of my classes, so I would say, and I'm going to kind of reveal a little bit something here. When I was in art school in the design program, my first year or two there, I thought it was a hot shot coming in, like most art school students, but I was kind of broken down quite a bit. I had a hard time with a lot of the assignments very early on, where I kept trying to push it before I actually even did the assignment. And anyway, that's for another episode, just that trial and tribulations. But one thing that I was always complimented on was my ability to just generate tons of ideas quickly. So some of my teachers would do these types of tests where what they would do is they would say it'd be something like, invent an ad campaign for spoons or something, and then I'm gonna put 5 minutes on this clock, a 5-minute timer. Boom. Come up with as many. I want you to just write them down. Whoever has the most things written down wins this competition, essentially. And it would be interesting because you just write down everything. You only have 5 minutes. So you're just like, I don't know, spoons in a box, spoons flying through air, spoons in the Marvel Universe. You're just like writing every single thing possible. But it's so crazy because once you get done with that, then she'd be like, okay, go through all of those, circle the top 5. Now for each of those, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to develop that even more. Go. Yeah. And then you develop each of those up. And it's so surprising once you do that. For anyone at home, I would suggest do that exercise, right? So if you have a client, let's just come up with a fake one. They own headphones and they want to do ads for headphones. Do that exercise at the very beginning. Sit down, put a timer on for 5 minutes, and just go. Just go. Just out of the universe. Write stupid ideas, crazy ideas. Write every idea. And then I'm sure that there's going to be at least one thing on there that you're like, you know what? If I had 5 more minutes to do all these variations of that idea, there's going to be something there. And so that's what I suggest to people when they're at that blank page is just go. And don't just go like, okay, yeah, all right, let me think here. And like, no, put a timer on, go. Like someone's got a gun to your head, come up with 100 ideas right now, go.
10x now.
Exactly.
So yeah, on that note, though, I wanted to make I'm not sure what is the best segue right now because we did not take my segue that I wanted to initialize. Because one of the good exercises that you can do is actually experiment, and if you experiment, you did that with Durable AI website builder or whatever it was, and I like that. Because it's good for you should do those exercises, and that's one of the things, experiment with new things.
Right. So yeah. So to kind of, and I'll go ahead and show this real quick. Let me just do this real quick. Sorry, I didn't have this already pulled up. Let me see. Okay,
because
cool.
I think it's an important step in the creative process to always okay, we got to experiment, we got to fail, and you have to fail all the time. You have to learn new things and just see what is going on. It could be that there's a new tool out there that actually is game changing. You don't want to be the last one to discover that,
Right. So, okay. So me as a web designer, obviously, one way to make a web designer mad in 5 seconds is tell them, well, I could get a website designed in AI. So that's a good way to. But in 30 seconds, you could actually design the website, apparently. So, so I heard this in another YouTube video. I think we're going to be doing a later video, I think, on AI. I've been doing a lot of just fun research out there into 3D AI, 2D AI, web design AI, even UX AI, copywriting AI. So I've kind of jumped into that world a little bit. But yeah, so, with this, of course, I was like, AI designed websites, I don't like that. But, I've learned to go in, though. Learn just like the war of the war of art and the art of war. Both of these books will say the same thing of know the enemy, right? What is the enemy? Foreshadowing of later in this podcast. And so, know your enemy. And so in this case, this is my enemy. So why should I not know it, right? I should know this very well. This is my competition, right? This is when I walk into a business guy and say, I want $5,000 to do your website. And he's gonna be like, but I have this thing that's free.
That's
so
really, I just can't imagine, with a really good contract, you just go on there, 30 seconds, give them a website. Well, this is what you paid for, actually, so I'm sorry.
Right. And so I would suggest, if you're out there and you're a web designer, if you're just a business person, go ahead, try this website out. What's very interesting about it is so it's using AI. It's telling you what your business name should probably be. Then it's from there, it's just creating a website and filling it with content based on kind of the things that you do. So you can see your car detailing, landscaping, photography, digital marketing, and then you can go in and you can kind of edit these things too. So that's what's kind of nice is it gives you a starting place, but for all of you out there, it's the most basic template in the entire world. I will say this again. You could literally upload WordPress 1.0 and it's the same template, or Squarespace 10 years ago, it's the same template. So they're not doing anything amazing in that world yet.
Shout out to Durable.
But it is interesting. Like, this is their first shot at that. This is 1.0. So, but yeah, to get to your point though, is I could have just been mad and grumpy about this. Well, I'm not going to check it out. I can do better websites. But know thy enemy. You need to go in there. You need to check out these things, and you need to know what you need to be better than. Because that's the thing, is this AI and all this stuff, and we talk about it every episode, is it's getting scarier, but in a way it's making us all honest and raise the bar more and more and more. And so...
Yeah. On that note, though, you say, like, know your enemy. And sometimes, like, friends and enemies can be the same thing, you know?
No, they can't
friends
be.
Friends can tell you, like, one thing, but they don't give you actually good advice, where your enemy will roast shit out of you, and he will get you actually some factual advice, you know? Like, it could be interchanged at that point, you know? Like, your friend is your enemy because, like, they will maybe promote your business, but only for cheap work because, like, they know you, you know? Stuff like that. Like, friends and enemies and business can be switched around. What is, like, really funny, because you want to know your enemies and you want to learn from them what they are doing, you know? You want to be friendly with your enemies because, like, in case you need to hire them. It's simply as that, you know? Or you maybe need to cover, you know?
Yeah.
Like, where, like, your real friends, you can't send them out and be like, hey, do this, and they just like, boy, oh boy.
Well, yeah. And I don't have very many enemies, I would say, like people that are enemies. You know, I have competition.
It's like a mindset thing too, you know, like it's healthy competition. You should see, like, your competitors as, like, this is good competition. I like it. I like the game. Let's play the game.
Yeah, and you know, risking getting off the tracks here a little bit, but I think this is important, is the fact that I myself is still growing in this direction. I think one of the worst things, if you were to ask me, like, what was one of the things when you were an art student or early on in the design career, what was one of the things you were worst at? And for me, it was not viewing everyone as competition. Like, because it was kind of beaten in me in art school. I don't know if this is the same outside of art school, but it was really beaten into me. That guy next to you, that's your competition in the interview. That girl to your left of you, she's also your competition. So you need to push it, and you need to take these people down. And it, you know, it created this, like, really intense kind of environment that made me better quicker. However, it was hard to shut that off once I got out in the world. That kind of mentality that you need to fight everyone, and that everyone's against you, and oh, that guy also does videography and he's in the same event, so what the heck, why am I even here? And it just creates all this kind of doubt. And, you know, so I'm even to this day still working through that, but I would say I'm light years better at just understanding, like, there's lots of clients, there's lots of missions, there's millions of things you could be doing as a creative. You know, there's enough pieces of the pie.
There's a lot of pie out there. Especially after Thanksgiving, you got to get that pie.
Exactly. And so, you know, so with that, it's like, you know, it's just understanding that all ships rise with the rising tide type of thing, right? That, you know, if he's pushing it and you're mad that he's pushing it, well, then use that anger to push yourself, and you guys should be back and forth. You should be just getting better and better and better. I think that's the one thing I do miss about art school, and even being in a design firm. That's the one thing I would like to maybe, you know, if there's one reason that I would want to go back into a design firm, is just that competition. Just like, you're surrounded by so many people that are just as good, if not better than you, and that really, you know, drives up your anxiety, but also drives up your work. You know. Yeah, it works up the drive. So yeah, but you know, so I'm trying to think of something recent, but I can't think of anything. But
I have, like, a bunch of those experiences. Like, I always go to events and there's always a videographer. Sometimes a hired videographer, or it's one who does it for free, and it's like, okay, I got my camera out, this is a cool event, I'm getting some free shots, I maybe submit my footage for free and maybe get a shout out from the event, or people are doing it on the phone, and then it's a major event. And you could say they're all competition, you could say that, but in the end, it's like, it should be not your mindset, you know? It's like, learn from them and see what works, and also know thyself, and basically be like, I got booked for this not because, like, maybe it's not because of the quality, but maybe for the delivery time, maybe for the creative freedom, or whatever it is, or maybe just for the price, or being available. You know, you have to know all those factors. And just knowing yourself is like, okay, he's maybe booked because he's like very nice, but he's maybe out of budget, or he's maybe like delivery time is too long, or whatever, you know. So it's really good knowing yourself.
Oh yeah. Well, that's where it almost all comes from. That's the funny thing, is right. It's your own type of stuff you're working through that comes out when you see someone that's good. We see it all the time on social media, right? Anytime you open up some guy's profile and he's just killing it, you know, I still to this day will have that first reaction be like, oh, this guy, I wish I was that guy. And it's yourself that comes out, right? So it's like it's kind of working on that too, of like, be happy with yourself. And when you're happy with yourself, you're not going to be so combative with everyone else. That's what I feel like, is when you get in these rooms where there's this creative guy and he's just super combative and has his arms crossed and he's stuck in his ways. It's because he doesn't feel comfortable about himself, usually. If you're to like peel the onions layers, he's not really happy with his work. So that's where that kind of comes from.
So here's another thing with that mindset. You see that often if you're like, let's say you become friends with a bunch of videographers or web designers, and all your circle is that. Friends are very competitive on that circle. You know, they're just like, I'm your friend, and I should be getting all those gigs because I'm your friend. You know, and they feel that, and that is the wrong mindset. And like I surround myself with videographers on a big amount, so I feel like I know everybody in the city. That's like my opinion, because I go to networking events and whatever, who does video. And then, you know, I have also friends who are like very competitive. Like they are on a social event with me where I'm also a videographer, and I invite other people, and they're just like, no, I'm like the videographer, and they are like trying to hand out cards and being like very combative about that. And everybody knows like, this guy
Well, there's something to that too, of like just being a nice person. I mean, my God, I mean, we say this, I feel like every episode it comes back to this, but be like just a nice person. Like, it's just so crazy to me. I even went to this networking event a few weeks ago, and it was just funny to just see how some people have this intensity, and it just comes out. This just like I'm just waiting for you to pause so I can shove my card in your hand here, and it's just like dude,
and my
like
portfolio, and take this too. My last week.
Here this. Let me take a photo. What's your tag? And it's just like, calm down, dude. Like, just chill, breathe, be present. Ask me how my day is. Like, you know, so I feel like that's where I get these gigs and stuff. If you want to know the truth, like when I go out and get gigs, it's just the fact that I'm the least intense person in the room. That like, I'm the guy that's leaning back like, get the website or not, I don't care. Like, I'll just paint. Like, I have this like interesting, I've loved what I've done in the last year or two. I haven't said on this podcast yet because I haven't really found a good way to describe it, but this kind of idea that like, as a creative, you have all of the exit routes, you have all of the entrances. Like, you can do anything, right? Like, they're lucky you want to work on their project because you're like, fine, I won't. I'm going to go do something more fun then. That's easy. Like, I'm still going to create stuff. You're never going to stop me from creating. So I've been starting to think that way of like, whatever, even if I didn't get any gigs, let's say all my clients fired me, I got no gigs. Fine. I'll just paint. That's fine.
Just paint.
Make it easy on me.
I'll paint on the street.
I'll paint on the streets, bro. And like, you know, I've made the joke before too. Like, I'll just work at a gas station and paint every day. Like, I don't care. Like, that's not
wrong with that. Like,
that's not a bad life.
Like, so this is actually like one of my pet talks that I have like for my wife, because you know, depression is a real thing, and it's kind of rough, you know. And I'm like, the goal should be to be happy in no matter what environment you are. If that means like you work at a gas station and you just like work 9 to 5 or more, or maybe 2 jobs, you know, you have to find happiness in your surroundings and in your environment. And if that means you're in jail and you're right now just like, you know, you have to look around and search for happiness and find happiness, because it's everywhere. And you can determine like, this thing makes me happy, and somebody else is like, this thing actually sucks and I hate it, you know. There's palm trees, for example. For me, like when I drive into the sunset and I'm like, oh, there's a palm tree, and I get a nice sunset or sunrise, and it looks really cool, I'm happy. Or it could be like a regular sunset. Doesn't really matter, you know. Just pick something that you have available, like coffee. Makes me very happy.
But yeah, no, and I think that's it. It's just happiness, and it really is, and that's so contagious, right? I mean, like the probably the best networking you've ever done is when you were happiest, when you like showed up and you're just like, I'm ready, man. I don't care. There's no bringing me down, and people love that energy. Like, people are so attracted to that. And so, I've been on the other side. I totally have. I've been the guy that's like grumpy. Why am I not getting the breaks? That guy works half as much as I do, and he gets all of this stuff. And and people can read that. They don't want to be part of a sappy, sad story. Nobody wants to be part of that story. Like nobody wants to be part of your movie where you're depressed the whole movie, talking about how you need better clients and stuff. Like people want to be part of the movie where you're just this gifted creative that's like, hey, get on the ride, man, because we're taking off right now. We're going to creative land, and that's what
if you're laughing in Las Vegas, we're going to creative land.
We're going to creative land. Pew, 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 pew. So like, so my clients that love me love that I bring that out of them. I'll tell you what, like that's sometimes I do websites, I do logos, I do all these things, but like the thing that sometimes is the most valuable that I give them is excitement. I get them jazzed about it. I like by the end of like a branding like workshop, they're like, dude, I didn't even think about my company like this. You just blew my mind. I'm so ready. I can't wait to get back to the computer and just create stuff. Like that's what people love. If you can put your creativity out. Exactly. So I love that. Like even with you, when you bring up stuff, like I never like, I'm like, that sucks to be you. I'm always like, dude, no, how about this? Well, how about this? How about this? Well, we could always just do this, dude. Because that's where like I get really excited. And I think if you can generate that excitement in people, they just want to be on your team. Like it doesn't even matter if there's a better web designer, a better videographer. Like you get me excited. So I want to work with you.
Yeah. And I think like that is like, there's a theory about vibrations and frequencies and whatever, but that is a frequency as well. I'm not a very spiritual guy, but I'm like, if you hit something the right time and the right rhythm, like the advertising, you hit somebody in the right rhythm, you get a gig, It's like, oh, now I saw it 5 times, that dude is doing always something good and he has that upbeat energy. Why wouldn't I hire him? You get the right idea, and I think like that goes kind of into that thing too, like having the right frequency with your client. Nobody wants to be like a Debbie Downer, like, oh, this kind of sucked, and like, oh, this event kind of sucked. Why would I hire then this person if they're just like all negative, like if I meet a guy like, yeah, this event kind of blew, but I got so many cool ideas how to save it. Nice, or
yep. And yeah, so like let's fast forward. I kind of told you one of the worst things of Sean in art school, and let's talk about one of the worst things that Sean's been working through the last year. And for me, that's been the transfer of energy. And so like when I have a bad day, like this morning, even before this podcast, you guys got saved from it. But I came in grumpy. I think I'm like, just clearly grumpy. It's been a hard morning. There's been lots of stuff going on. And one thing I am trying to get better at is, so to kind of quote someone from the past, Oscar Wilde has a quote I'm probably going to butcher, where he says, we're all actors in our own play. And so and I really like that idea, right? Like, who are you in your play? Are you that sad, depressed guy that the whole world's just beating down, or are you that guy that's just curmudgeoning, I'm getting too old for this, or do you want to be that guy that every day wakes up and is creative and breathes creativity and is only here to serve creativity? Because it'll read. That's the weird energies that will read. You don't even have to say anything. If you come into a room, even if you have a big smile on your face, but you're depressed all day.
You're crying.
yeah. You're like, makeup's running. You're like, everything's great. Like, so it's like, when you go into these meetings, people can tell if you have this sad energy, and people can tell if you're fighting this upward hill battle. Even if you don't say anything, even if you laugh and you smile, people can look in your eyes and see that, like, there's sadness there. But if you come in and you're like, hey man, I just did this stuff, and this morning I woke up at 6 and painted till 8, and then I did this one call, and then I did some websites, and I went and got some lunch, and now I'm here. And if you have that kind of energy, people freaking love it. They're just like, yes, this guy lives in the space I want to be. Like, and so so there's something really important to that, and that may be a good segue to this. So
the art of the war, the war of the art. There's both books out there, very confusing, and don't buy the other book if you're not ready to like kill your other creatives.
Yeah, right. So The Art of War obviously is an old book that's all about, what to do when you're at war. It's a great way to know how to take advantage of people, to control conversations, to control situations. So it's more of an aggressive book, where The War of Art, is kind of talking about this war that's happening in here, that's always happening in here. And so what I love about this, so for all of you out there, it's by Steven Pressfield. You should definitely get this. This is a Bible of most creatives. I went to art school and I got this. He didn't go to art school and he still got this. I mean, this is such a big book, and it's so easy to read. It's a very, very, very thin, easy to read book. But one of the things that I love about this, that he starts off at right at the beginning of this book, is show up every single day. Show up every day. And how big that is. A lot of people that work out will understand this, that if you don't do something every day, while you can maybe create a habit, it's not a very strong habit. It's the daily thing where you don't even give yourself the option of no, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of creatives, we get in this place where some days we wake up and we're like, I'm just going to watch podcasts, or I'm going to play a video game, or, I'm not going to really do any creative making. I just don't feel like it this morning. But that's the morning.
Like taking the gig. Like, should I take this opportunity? Should I go out there? Should I, showing up is like number one. Like, sometimes just showing up gets you paid. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in showing up every day, yet again, now you're crafting a story, right? So to go back to my example, now you come into that meeting, but every day you show up for creativity, every single day. So this day is not different than the day before and the day before. So it's hard to like bring you down then, and things don't take as much energy out of you. You're like, no, I'm here every single day for creativity. And so in this book, he talks about the muse. And so in the muse, is very interesting because it's kind of this gray area thing that's existed for hundreds of years, this idea. And the muse, where that comes from historically, is this idea that there actually was this kind of soul or ambivalent force that would come down from the heavens and inspire creativity in you. And so the idea was that you would wait for the muse to come. You would paint every day, and then one day the muse would come down and you'd have the best idea you've ever had. Where Steven actually talks about in this book is that you shouldn't be waiting for the muse. You should go get that muse, and that muse will come if you show up every single day.
It's kind of like that thing when I was like saying, like, sometimes you just have to sit down and throw or like you said, like throw stuff at the wall. After you threw it on the wall, you see patterns, you see what you could do, like there's so many things. Like, as long as you sit down and do actually step 1 and 2, you're like, okay, I think what step 3 is, because it makes no sense. But you have to just take that step.
You got to get moving. Yeah, you just got to do. Something I'm still working on to this day is even just that. Like, get up, get to the computer, get moving. And I love the example that you just brought up, where it's not even just about showing up to the computer to get to work. It's showing up to the event. For people like me that are definitely not extroverts, it's hard for us to feel the same way about getting out in the community. That's something that I still need to do a lot of work on. Even in social media, I need to, spend time like daily to like go amongst the people, right? Go out there. Who are your people? Talk to them.
Or make that post on Instagram, for example, just like the story. It's like, it's the same thing. External people will see you. It's also showing up like, I don't feel like making a post right now, but if you just make it, somebody maybe sees it. It's you showed up.
Yeah, and we live in a time where people are just crafting their own stories. Sometimes they're false stories. Sometimes they're not really positive stories, but people understand this, the idea of you're crafting your social media presence. And so I think that is part of it, of like, write that story for yourself, show up every day, be the creative that's always creative. And I think that's a cool story to tell, because you can definitely tell the people that aren't creative all the time, or that dip their toes in once in a while, or get scared off by the smallest inconvenience. So it's just about showing up every day. So for everyone out there,
though, I have another thing that I want to say, because like we talked about like those frequencies and being positive and being hype, and like even if you're not hype and you show up, you still make a better impression than not showing up. Like, you still do, like, you show up for the work. It's like, don't get demotivated. Like, let's say you're an introvert and you're just like, I'm in a bad mood, I shouldn't go out because I don't have the right frequency, I'm not in the right mood or whatever, and I will be just at the event and I'm like, feel awkward. No, just show up. Just showing up, it doesn't matter. Just standing in that corner there will maybe put like an extrovert into the position, be like, I have nobody to talk to. I go to that person in the corner and I'm being like, hey, how's it going? My name is whatever, and now you met somebody who is an extrovert, even though you were not in the mood.
Yeah, exactly. And so in that case, someone like me, I'm not in love with that situation just in general. I like safety. I like controlling everything. And so So that really scares me. But I think that's where trying to fall in love with the game comes in, right? Even in this book, they mentioned it. They have a whole chapter called like Loving the Game. And I think that's the game that we have to try to fall in love with. For all you people out there that are kind of like me, that you don't like to go out to events where you don't know anyone to kind of chit chat and talk and stuff like that. You don't like that. That's not what you did this for. Try to fall in love with that. Try to see how that's also part of the good stuff that you're doing. And that's what I'm trying to do right now, is that I think before
goals. Set goals for that event, like for example, like handing out cards in a smooth way, like, oh, maybe I should meet 2 people at the event, you know? Maybe I should talk to a person. If I just talk to one person, I got my goal achieved, and hey, the game, next time we're doing 2 people.
Yeah, and you know, and that may work for some people for sure, is like create these kind of challenges. Almost think of this as like side quests for you to go on to get,
it's a game.
You know. Yeah, and I think that's a good way to kind of separate out, this isn't work, this is a game. You know, one thing I would add on to that too is just view that anything can happen, that there really is no, when you go to like a networking event, I think some people feel like they have to leave with a job, or they need to leave with things, where you could meet partners, you could meet clients, you can just meet friends. I've even just met friends like you at a networking event. Like it's not like you've ever hired me for a project, but we're friends now. So it's like, so it's still worth it.
I want to hire you. I'm just on a budget.
He's been on the budget for 4 years, ladies and gentlemen. But but you
Wait
know,
a minute,
so
I hired you actually for free. Oh, you remember the Renaissance Fair, my dude?
Oh, this thing's for free, right? This is what he hired me to do. Now I remember. I haven't gotten paid yet for this, but
there were free pizza involved that I have had.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. If I was just there, but you know, so that's how I try to view these things too, is that like, you know, just be there, and just people seeing your face, then they'll just know you're in the community. And that's important, because that's honestly a problem of mine. I will say to people out there, I mean, if you were to go troll through my Instagram right now, what you're going to see like 100 followers, 111 followers. You know, if you were to start to look up like, oh, this guy has a podcast, how big of a deal he must be, I guess, or think he is, like, not at all. Like I need to do a much better job. That's why we do this podcast, is we've recognized that Sean has a lot of knowledge that nobody knows about, because he doesn't go out and share it ever. So
yeah, Sean is my free gem. Gem.
Yeah.
GEM. You know what I mean. You're my gem.
Yep, I'm his gem. But
my knowledge gem.
But yeah, and I am for a lot of other people, but they're always, it's funny when I run into people and they're surprised. They're like, "Oh, so you must, like, you know, you must have podcasts, you must do conferences, you must do a lot of stuff." And I'm like, "Not at all, no. I've been hiding in my office working for years. Help me."
Last client meeting was on the street with the homeless guy. He did not like my painting.
I didn't say that. How did you know I did that just now? But yeah, so it's showing up, right? It's showing up every day. Something I need to start doing is like, how do I show up in the community every day? And that's an interesting thing to think about, right? Because even on days like, you know, today's a good example where I'm way behind on a project. I really should just work 10 hours straight all the way through, but you know, really, you should be like, nope, 8 hours, and there should be 2 hours of getting out there. And you need to go to the cafes and talk to people, or you need to go to the art galleries and talk to people, or, you know, and so it's things like that, you know, even going to conferences, something I would like to do more of, which is prohibitively expensive a lot of the time, but showing up for those conferences, or doing the digital ones even, and making sure to like be in the chat and engage, you know, something you do really well, I would say. I think you also do the cold call stuff, which I don't know if you mind talking about more, where you actually, you know, you'll just see a cool videographer on Instagram and you'll just message him.
So currently, the last thing I saw was like Barber run an ad on Instagram, and he had a photo of himself like, "Hey, I'm your local barber." And I'm like, that would have been way more effective if I heard you talking, you know, so I can see the personality, if we're vibing, you know, because a photo says a lot, but not enough, you know, like it could be that guy is like a really tough guy, or you know, like that. There's so much to read if a person is talking in a video, like you already know the personality, if they're shy, if they're not shy, if you vibe with this person, no matter what you are, it doesn't really matter, because there's people who like that type of personality, but from a photo you cannot tell. Like, okay, you don't look bad, I guess, you know, so that's the only thing that you can tell, or like, oh yeah, you're in the barber shop now, but I don't know if I would like to talk to you or not, you know. And I also don't get a feel for the thing, so I immediately like, okay, hey, if you would have hired me or want to hire me, here's what I could do for you. Like, tell a little bit about your personality by just talking and telling people what you're gonna do or want to do.
Yeah. So you reached out to him and told him that? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. What did he say? Anything
Did not
from
respond.
that?
So like, but that's like cold calling. Like sometimes they just like, oh, there's spam, or hey, it's in the spam folder. You don't know, but I at least give it a shot if I feel like that would have benefited him. You know, I'm like,
yeah, and you know. And there's ways to be maybe more successful in those cases too, but they're more risky, right? Like, so for example, in that case, you could have gone to the barbershop and been like, hey, can I get a haircut? I saw your ad. And then while you're talking to him, then talk, well, I do video and there's some thoughts I had on your ad and stuff. Because what I've learned too sometimes, and I haven't done this in a while, is that
actually would have committed to the $12, $15, or $30 haircut.
Maybe if you needed it anyway, if you were going to get the haircut anyway.
I see how you that is actually like, I like that, because like,
I've done that
too
before.
cheap.
Well, yeah, because I that's how I got a lot of clients early on, a few years ago. Like when I lived in Colorado Springs the first time before I went to Florida, is I got a lot of clients because they would invite me to something, or somehow I would be going to something, and you know, they would be like, well, I don't know if we can design this, maybe we can't afford it, or we're looking at some other guy, but you should come to this event. And then I would come, and then I would have a conversation with them, and then we have more time for me to be like, yeah, no, you did great, you know, I would have maybe done that better, you know, it'd be cool to really see you do these things and stuff like that. And then they end up becoming clients because they already see this guy already showed up. He's already showed up, spent time. He's even sometimes put money down. You know, you kind of take all this armor off of them when you do that, and then they're listening. Where, yeah, a lot, it blows my mind how many messages and emails I get of like, hey, we saw your website. We would like to redesign your website. And I'm like, I'm a web designer, first off, so thank you for telling me I need to redesign my website. But like, and it's like the most impersonal, robot-fed message in the world. And like, what the hell does this do? Who cares? You know, we are a #1 international agency specializing in sales funnels, blah, 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 social media integration. Here's some keywords. And like, nobody likes that. Nobody cares. And half the people aren't going to read to the end of the email, you know, where you could just go and be like, hey, bro, tap them on the shoulder. This is great, but this is what you should do next, bro. And people will be like, okay.
It's kind of funny too if you think about that. You get those emails, and those emails could be right. You know, they could be like, yes, maybe we are the #1, and maybe we would be like very beneficial for you, and maybe we should have hired a person, but we don't do it because you're in that spam folder. And it's like a very interesting concept. And maybe that person who's showing up in person is not the best fit, and they would have been better off. But you need that personal connection. You need that impression. You need that extra step to make the difference. Like, you're different than those spam.
Yeah, there's this cool story by Aaron Draplin, really famous designer. Design Draplin Co. Draplin Design Co. I mean, really great designer. He has this book that I read recently, Pretty Much Everything. Such a great book. Can't recommend that book enough. But in it, he talks about how there was a time and period where it was all about relationships even more than it is today. He talks about how his dad had passed away, and they were cleaning up the garage of all of his dad's stuff, and they saw this piece of paper nailed up against the wall, and it was some guy that like did radiators or HVAC or something, but they knew that his dad was best friends with this guy, and they called him up, and the guy was just crying the moment that he heard that his dad had died, and he was talking to this guy, and they actually had this really great relationship that had sprung from years ago of just like meeting at a mechanic or something like that. And then his dad, you know, nailed up this phone number he had scrawled on a piece of paper back in like 1967, nailed it to his garage wall, and just called that guy every single time. He never did a Google search. He never did anything. He had a guy for it. And how we need to think about that again. Like, that hasn't gone away. I think we think that's gone away, but there's still that. I think, like, you want to be that guy that someone writes your number on a piece of paper and nails it to their wall and says, if I ever need video, I got a guy for it. Yeah. You know, I think there's something to that of becoming a real partner for people. I think, you know, the more that we can think of this stuff as like a village, right? That we all do things in the village. And once people start to think of you as that, you're just the guy in the village that makes videos for everyone. That's a great place to be. Where if you're the cold calling robot, I'm just trying to make $100 million so I can put a YouTube video out there saying how I made $100 million off of poor saps in 1 month. You know, people don't like that. They don't really want you to make millions of dollars either. That's something I've had to learn even the last few years is your clients don't necessarily want to see you get richer. Like they want to see you help them.
Yeah, so that's one of the things where I'm like, friends are not really your friends because they want to be rich. And
yeah, no, we're not. We don't want. We just want to be rich.
Like it's a weird mindset, but it's like they want to be rich, you know. And it's like it's a weird concept to wrap your mind around. Like if your friends are rich, you're rich, you know. And everybody's like, I want to be the rich guy, so I have to absorb all the money. So why does he deserve this and not me? You know, what is a weird mindset? And professionals are learning that mindset is not working and they adapt the right one. But friends, they're usually like, they're not in business. They're not like, why should I be nice to my competitor? They maybe see their friends as a competitor and they don't tell them, you know, and it's a weird thing, even though everybody's doing something completely different.
Yeah, well, it is. There is this weird thing of like, you know, that people just have to get over in general. The idea of like someone else's good is not your bad. There's even been people in my family recently I've had to explain this to of like, you've got to want the best for all of us because what happens then is that you get your way and nobody around you is succeeding, you know, and because that's not what you want either, right? You just want to be with a bunch of losers that aren't doing well and like, no, you want all your friends, you want to be surrounded by people doing well. So then you need to celebrate their successes and you need to show up for them so they get those successes. And there's still so many people I have to tell, like I'll catch them like when I share good news, you can just see in their body energy they're not happy about that good news because they didn't get good news. And it's like, no, man, this helps you. Like if I make $1 million and you're going to make something off of that being my friend. So it's like, you know,
you're at least invited to the party.
Yeah, at least come hang out in the hot tub, bro. You know,
and all you need is like a friend with a yacht, you know, then you don't have to pay for the yacht.
Yeah, well, you know, we're looking at you, man. You're the one in Florida. Where's that yacht? But yeah, so, you know, I think, so to kind of wrap up this book, you know, yet again, for everyone out there, you know, this is the War of Art. Definitely get this book. It's very cheap, very easy read. I still reread it to this day. We both have the book.
It's a good sign.
Yeah, which is a good sign. But you know, it's just such a great book. And also, I do want to also call this guy out. Steven Pressfield was just on Joe Rogan just this last week, so check out that episode, a really good Joe Rogan episode where he does a lot. Yeah, well, now you do. And so, you know, he also does a lot of name dropping of other marketing and design and creative experts that are also great to read. But so watch that podcast, get this book, because there's just so much in this book about showing up every single day, being in love with the game, not waiting for the muse, but coming every day and just knowing the muse will come to you. And so, yeah,
I can't sign off on that. That's the number one thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. So even this podcast is a great example, right? We've had some small bumps, you know, up and down in this podcast, and I think, you know, neither of us are famous yet. I don't know. I didn't check this morning, but I'm still not an influencer, I guess. But we show up every single week, and that's what's important, right? Is if we show up, we record this stuff, eventually something may hit, or maybe not. But that's why you just show up every day, because you have love for the game.
Yeah, no, I can speak from that. Like, if you do have like a YouTube channel, for example, if you just make a YouTube video, 10 of them maybe suck. One of them just goes like more viral than the others. And that is like just a thing that you have to do for the game. And you don't know which one will do good or which one will get picked up from the algorithm. Doing the work will give you data, and that's all you need. You need the data, you need to produce, and you need to rate this podcast 5 stars on Spotify and on YouTube. And
yeah, so like and subscribe to this podcast. Please leave a comment. If you don't want to leave a comment, send us a message. We have infinitecreativepodcast@gmail.com. Join the conversation. We're going to try to start to have some guests on here as well. So if you'd like to be a guest, let us know.
I forgot about that, boy.
We forgot. We almost had a guest
today. It's
Black
Friday too. Like, do you gonna buy something, Sean, on this note?
Well, yeah. So, you know, so this podcast will come out a couple weeks after Black Friday, but yeah. No. I know what you're about to say. No. But But, this year I'm not doing too much. In past Black Fridays, I've gotten a lot of equipment like iPads, things like that, styluses. A lot of that stuff's pretty good prices. One thing today that I know we're going to look into after this I'm going to bring up is doing the 50% discount on Riverside. That's for Black Friday only. So...
Boy, Riverside, I can get behind that because Riverside's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Riverside is pretty awesome. It's what we use to deliver this amazing, top-of-the-line, 5-star podcast to all of you. So, but yeah, how about you? Is there anything on like Black Friday you're kind of watching, or Cyber Monday for that matter?
Yeah, so I'm basically going to blow all my money from the gigs that I have to reinvest in my shenanigans business.
Sounds about on brand for you. That sounds about right.
Got to have all the tools. No, I also sell, like, right now a lot of stuff, and we still have the major medical bills going on. But yeah, I feel like right now with this bad market, I feel like I should expand where other people are selling and, basically abandoning the ship. I see it left and right. People are selling stuff, and I'm just like, no, I'm not. I'm actually doubling down. I have more gear than ever for a cheaper price, and a lot of people are not showing up. And I'm like, I can show up. I don't mind showing up. And even if it's not the price, sometimes I will show up and make it the price.
Nice. Well, good. That's such a big deal. I mean, because that's the thing that you learn is like, so if we have another recession coming, which we probably do, in the spring, where things really will start to maybe fall apart economically wise, that's when it is important to show up every day. That's when you clear out the weak ones, really. They're the ones that drop out. They're the ones that are like, well, my sister has a cool gig at an insurance company. Oh, well, my brother did say I could be a temp at his law agency or whatever. And, that's when you get the people that are like, yeah, I think I'll go for comfort. But if you can stick it out in those moments, if you could be the guy that like started a company in 2008, then there you go. Like, get in while the going's not hot because everything's cheap. Like you're getting now. Everyone's selling their gear. You're getting it for a discount. So yeah, I think that's smart.
The funny part is like people are trying to book and they cannot find videographers to go around. So I'm like, well, the people who do it for fun, they are selling right now, and I'm just like, I'm gobbling it up, and I'm just like, it's nice.
It is nice, yeah. So keep showing up. I mean, it's the same for me on my end. I do see that too.
I hope it stays like that, though. I don't want to jinx anything because it could be. Whew.
Well, it goes up and down. That's the thing. Is like you just want to be consistent. Just every day you show up consistently, and for that exact reason. So that's what's great. Yet again, I'm just going to say this one more time. Read this book because this helps you in the best of times and the worst of times. And so stick it out. Just stick it out. So.
Yeah, and on that note, though, if like things are going rough right now, things are supposed to go rough right now. This is like a major depression. The market is bad in general, but that doesn't mean like you cannot make it through those times and make more money than ever, because like if something goes down, something goes up, and there's new opportunities all the time, and all you really need is like one good client feeding you through the recession with like a major gig because he's in a thriving industry, and who knows what that is. I don't know who's the client. I don't know that industry. But, yeah, look around. There's always people doing good.
Yeah, there is. So, yeah. So, with that, I think it's been a good episode. I think we talked about the blank page and, how we kind of both kind of go with the flow on the blank page and then kind of worked into, like, just show up every day, and don't be afraid if the muse doesn't come down. You don't have some big, amazing creative thought. Yeah, show up tomorrow. It'll come tomorrow.
Yeah,
it'll come.
Some time. Sometimes, like on that note, though, with the time, sometimes you just have to sit down for 15 minutes. You don't feel it. Well, maybe the muse comes after 30, and she will show up every day if you show up every day. And it's just like the time you have to spend. How long do you need to get into the mood of doing things? But this was a good episode, Sean. And
it was.
Next Friday, I feel like, or Thursday. We're shooting Thursdays now. We're going to produce faster and better because, like, after recession.
Yeah. So, we're changing our flows all the time on this side. So hopefully you guys are seeing the production's getting a little bit better. We're going to start doing some other stuff we're talking about. We're going to release hopefully in the coming episodes, but just stay tuned. Thank you for those that are there and still watching all of these. It means a ton to us. So just keep watching and we'll keep sharing some cool, awesome stuff to you.
Yeah. See ya.
See everybody. Bye.